What's up, everybody? I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our special video for today, Thursday. Usually we post on Saturday, but today I'm marking today the 100-day mark till the hurricane season begins. Now, what does that mean exactly? Most importantly, what should we expect? What should we look out for? All things we'll be going over in today's video, but before we get started, just want to encourage you, if you're new to the channel and if you like what you'll see today, I strongly encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, and share with family and friends or those who you think might be interested. But getting on with today's video, 100 days till the hurricane season, really quickly giving you a countdown, 100 days till we begin. What does it mean? Well, basically we're 100 days out till June 1st, and that is when the Atlantic hurricane season begins. However, we're 83 days away from May 15th, which is when the Eastern Pacific, hurricane season begins, and also that's when the National Hurricane Center starts releasing tropical weather bulletins for both the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific basins. So basically, if you're not familiar with what tropical weather bulletins are, basically daily or every 6 hour they release bulletins during the hurricane season updating what's going on in the world of the tropical Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific. And in recent years they've begun doing that on May 15th, when the Eastern Pacific hurricane season began as well. And so it's 83 days out till that, but still, bottom line, hurricane season is coming, and it's coming pretty soon. Trust me, these next 100 days or 83, depends on which one you follow. They're going to come by and they're going to pass by really quickly. Trust me on that. So, with that being said, what should we look out for within these next 83 to 100 days? What do we look for typically in a season in the Atlantic? Talking about Atlantic terms, because that's what we're focusing on right now. We'll focus on the Eastern Pacific at a later date. But most importantly, one of the main factors, and if you're on other videos and if you're on other articles and websites, you hear a lot of people talking about El Nino and La Nina. That is the number one important thing when it comes to a hurricane season. Do we have El Nino, or in some cases, will there be La Nina? But most importantly, do we have El Nino? Because El Nino tends to put a lid on hurricane seasons for the most part. Usually. So that is one big factor. And by the way, I have a map here of El Nino and La Nina. Basically, the phenomenon of warm versus cold waters along the equatorial region of the Pacific, and they do have impacts on hurricane season. El Nino tends to be less favorable, while La Nina tends to be more favorable. We'll go into depth with that a little bit more. But most importantly, for the Atlantic terms, how warm is the Atlantic? That's another factor. Sea surface temperatures, we all know, have huge implications on intensification and the ability for storms to form. So that is another factor. And most importantly, another factor is what is the steering like, and that's more or less for when we do have storms, where are they going to track? Are they going to go out to sea? Are they going to hit the United States? Are they going to hit the Caribbean? What are they going to do? The steering part we're going to save for another time, because right now it's February, and we're not even into March yet, but we're going to get there very soon, obviously. We're getting close towards the end of the month. The shortest month of the year is February. Within just a week we'll be in March. So maybe from that point on we'll be able to look at steering a little more, but I want to focus on the first 2 points for this video specifically. Okay, moving on. Speaking about the first factor we mentioned, El Nino, we do have that right now in the Pacific, and what you're looking at is sea surface temperature anomalies. Anomalies meaning departures from normal, and we have a bunch of these oranges and reds along the equatorial region of the Pacific. You're looking at the Pacific right now, and that is an El Nino, when we have warmer sea surface temperature anomalies across the Pacific. But this is not expected to last, though. In fact, we might even see a La Nina take into place later this year in place of this current El Nino, and that'll have its separate implications on the hurricane season on its own. What about the Atlantic sea surface temperatures? Very, very warm off the coast of Africa. anomalies reaching up 2, even 3, some places even 4 degrees Celsius above normal. So very warm Atlantic indeed. And that stretches all the way into the Caribbean and even in portions of the Gulf. Sea surface temperature anomalies basically meaning the Atlantic is very warm as of right now, and some places in the Atlantic right now are already able to support hurricane activity, at least from the standpoint of sea surface temperatures right now. Obviously, there are a whole bunch of other factors that go into the development of tropical systems, which is why we're not getting them already. Which is why we have hurricane season from June 1st up until November 30th, because that's when atmospheric conditions are more favorable for things to develop. Obviously, we could have those sea surface temperatures, but without the atmospheric conditions, nothing is going to come out of it, and it's basically useless to just look at sea surface temperatures alone, at least from determining exactly how much will form, if it'll form. But at least at this point, as we're in right now in February, they are a pretty good standpoint to see how much energy there is available, for instance, for determining if or not the Atlantic will have enough energy to supply maybe more storms than normal this year, or in some cases where the Atlantic is much colder than what it is right now, maybe not so active hurricane season. But that is, of course, stuff we could go into a little bit further later on. But here are the actual sea surface temperatures, because I showed you the anomalies, but how do the actual sea surface temperatures look like? Right now, this is the Atlantic, and when I told you that some areas could already support hurricane development, the magic number that we typically look at for sea surface temperatures being favorable for hurricane development is usually 26 degrees Celsius, or if you use Fahrenheit, that is roughly 78 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit of water. And look at it all across the Caribbean, even into portions of the central MDR. And this is where the very warm Atlantic comes into play, because usually we don't even have these anomalies stretching as east as they do this time of year in February. And I'll show you more on that in just a little bit. But here we see 26, 27s, even 28s in some parts of the basin. So when I tell you that the Atlantic is already ready to support development, trust me when I say that it is, because it is very warm out there. And since we're only in February and we got 100 days still till the season, it is a lot of time, but it's not a lot of time. It's very confusing, but once you but if you're a hurricane tracker, a enthusiast, you'll definitely know what I mean. But we're only in February still. We have 100 days, and trust me, between now and June 1st, the Atlantic will warm up a lot, and we'll see these 28s spread through the entire basin, probably, at least through the entire Caribbean. And once we get to June, the Gulf of Mexico as well. The Gulf kind of cool right now, obviously because it's winter, and sometimes when we have cold fronts and Arctic air come through, those tend to cool down the northern Gulf coast and kind of cool down the shelf waters along the northern Gulf. That is not really of any concern right now, though. Here are the Eastern Pacific actual sea surface temperatures, and one thing you notice, the Pacific is also very warm too, and obviously that is partially due to El Nino. Widespread 26, 27s, even as high as 28s, 29s, and even a few 30s, but that's really far south. But the Pacific is warm, but it'll probably cool down, especially as we head closer away from this El Nino and towards La Nina, and I'll show you what I mean by that in just a moment. But even the Pacific too, in the tropical Pacific, they're also warm enough right now to support hurricane development, obviously. Sea surface temperatures, they're very warm, and as we head towards the spring and summer, they'll probably warm up even more. So we know what to look for in a hurricane season, but what's the difference in factors that support an active versus an inactive hurricane season? Most importantly, as we were talking about, warmer than normal sea surface temperatures, that tends to be, don't want that to change, as we were saying, an active season, what do we typically see? We tend to see warmer than normal sea surface temperature anomalies, and actual sea surface temperatures. That's what I was saying. As sea surface temperatures this far out, they can be a kind of a reference point, at least when we compare to past years, to see maybe how much activity we could see in terms of how much the ocean has supply for energy. And we typically in an active season look for warmer than normal sea surface temperatures. Also, rising motion, because we have warmer water, that tends to lead to more rising motion in the atmosphere, and that is something we see in more active seasons. No El Nino, that's the big thing, because no El Nino correlates to less wind shear. Wind shear is winds pushing thunderstorms along the top portions of thunderstorms. Wind shear is the change in direction in the atmosphere. Stronger wind shear, we see the thunderstorms more disorganized, and because they're being blown from winds in the atmosphere. Basically, more wind shear is bad, and that's what we tend to see more in inactive seasons. But in active seasons, you want to look for lower wind shear and dry air. Well, I guess that could speak for itself. We don't want to see dry air, especially for the development of thunderstorms, which then help develop tropical systems, of course, in the Atlantic, and of course globally. Tropical systems are made of a collection of thunderstorms organizing, and wind shear prevents that organization, and dry air does as well. And in an inactive season, basically the kind of things that make an inactive season, and sometimes these factors, they can kind of change. That, like, sometimes some years we have warmer sea surface temperatures, no El Nino, but maybe sometimes drier air and higher wind shear, versus an inactive season where we tend to see colder water, but sometimes for some period of time we see less dry air and less wind shear. It's not that we see these factors constantly throughout the season. Things change, but these are generally factors that we see, which sometimes point to one or the other outcome. And basically, in an inactive season, the opposite of an active year, we see colder than normal sea surface temperatures, sinking motion in the Atlantic because of that, and more often than not, inactive seasons occur because El Nino is present, so the Pacific is warmer, taking away energy from the Atlantic, and wind shear is higher, which is bad for tropical development, and we have more dry air. So that's the distinction between the two. And definitely, though, for one thing, to go off that map, what do we have this year? As I mentioned before, the Atlantic is very warm, record so, in fact, and I've got data to prove you. This is both of these maps I found off Twitter by Brian McNulty, very nice guy, and definitely knows a lot about sea surface temperatures, giving credit to the author. Both of these maps are by him, and he posted this on Twitter, and I found this very interesting. First off, this obvious map on the right here, this is a plot of 2024 compared to the rest of all the other years since 1981. And you could clearly see we're trailing much above with sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic at record levels right now, and we have been since the start of the year. Quite incredible, to be honest with you. And also, this map on the left, this is a map of the probability of occurrence. And this is very important because Brian McNulty actually did tweet about this. And these maps were in the tweet that he put out on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. But he said that the Atlantic right now, the warm sea surface temperatures that we're seeing right now, is roughly a 1 in every 240,000 something year occurrence. Basically meaning what we're seeing right now in the Atlantic is unprecedented in terms of how warm it is. Just incredible what we're seeing. And we've been talking about it. If you've been following my channel for the past few weeks, we've been mentioning about how warm the Atlantic is. It's quite impressive, and definitely one of the puzzle pieces that we look for in a hurricane season. It's just one of the most important things. Sea surface temperatures, once again, even though they're not everything in terms of development of a system, they are one of the most important factors. And the warmer they are, that means especially the more supply they could supply to more storms developing. The other factor, of course, El Nino. El Nino is expected to transition into La Nina, and these maps are pretty self-explanatory. This is the map by the NOAA ENSO probability. They have the red here. These are bars for El Nino. El Nino is right now still ongoing, but look, as we get later into the year, especially this time frame here, this is August, September, October. These are all tri-monthly periods, by the way. ASO representing August, September, October, and those are the peak months for the hurricane season. And you notice what the probability is highest for, that is La Nina. So basically that means all the warm water we have in the Pacific, that'll all go away, and that'll all replace itself with cooler waters and eventually La Nina. And this is one favorable factor as well for an Atlantic hurricane season. So this is very interesting. And we also have another sort of plot here. This is also by the IRI CPC, basically showing the same thing. The Nino 3.4 dipping below 0.5, basically by all the models. Most importantly, they all dip below positive 0.5. So basically meaning we're going to dip below El Nino, and they're all dipping below negative 0.52, most of them, and that represents we're going to go into La Nina territory at some point later in the year. And there is unanimous agreement, not only from this, we could look at it from this standpoint, but also by the actual climate models themselves. And basically right off the bat, you can see here for August, September, October, notice how all of them show a blue tongue, a tongue of cooler water across the Pacific, basically meaning all of the models here agree that we will be heading to some sort of cooler ENSO event or La Nina, like some of the models indicate. Some of them go stronger, especially most notably the NMME, basically all the models. So the CFS, this is the CANCIPS, and this is the NMME model. All of them show pretty potent La Nina coming on. This is the C3S model too. This is not as potent because this only goes out to July, but I'm pretty sure once this extends to October, like all these models do, because this is an average from August to October, once we get to that point, I'm pretty sure the C3S will probably show the same thing. But even then, they still show a developing cold signal along the equatorial Pacific, representing they too think that La Nina is coming. And most importantly, another thing, look at what they show in the Atlantic. Very warm signal, especially through the tropical Atlantic, basically meaning the area right here in the deep tropics. And that's where you want to see the warmth, especially right in the deep tropics, right where we see the bulk of development occur when it comes to hurricanes. You want to see all the warm water in the deep tropics. And that's what all these models, literally all of them, the CFS, CANCIPS, all of them show a deep tropic signal for warm water this year. Both the most positive factors you could get, honestly, for an active hurricane season, all the models show. And it's reflective not only in their sea surface temperatures, but their precipitation too. They have all the models here, all the green. You could kind of put together the pieces. The green represents more precipitation, and all the models show that, especially in the Atlantic basin. Look at it. And most importantly, once again, right through the deep tropics, you can see they all show a unanimous green signal through the deep tropics from the MDR into the Caribbean, which represents probably that there'll be more tropical wave activity, and the atmosphere as well will be more favorable for maybe tropical waves to be robust, and maybe for more hurricane development as well. So these are all signals that we're using. And even here, look at the C3S. This is only goes out to July. And even then, too, look at that. Just a incredible signal from the models, honestly. Basically, bottom line, this is also another favorable signal, too. So it's all pointing in a positive direction, at least when it comes to Atlantic development, too. And that's reflected in the current predictions so far. Nice segue. I actually like that. But this is reflected in the current predictions so far. Not that many because it is very early on. We don't really start getting predictions till next month, into April. But the current predictions so far, most importantly, the TSR, they released their prediction back all the way in December. And the models have had this signal that we're seeing right now with a very favorable look in the Atlantic. This has been going back to as early as last season. As soon as last season ended, all the models were already showing something very favorable for this upcoming hurricane season. And TSR, because of that, they forecasted 20 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes. And this was all the way back in December. And also, and I know how a lot of people feel about him, Joe Bastardi with Weatherbell, but this is the only other major prediction that I could find that somebody made. He too went all out for this upcoming hurricane season, also back in December. And Joe Bastardi clearly has a lot of confidence in this upcoming hurricane season because he forecasts 25 to 30 named storms and major hurricanes 5 to 9. The average, by the way, for major hurricanes is 3, and he's expecting up to triple the average. Definitely very confident in his. He's definitely very confident and very adamant that we could see a very active season. And I know how people think about Joe Bastardi. He tends to sometimes hype things up, but he is sometimes good as well with predicting long range patterns very far out. Sometimes, other times he can be a little, um, you know, but it's weather, it's meteorology. Not everybody will always be right all the time. Something that people quite honestly forget very often. We can't always be right, especially with weather. Mother Nature, at the end of the day, does whatever she wants to. So we can try our best to predict. Sometimes we'll get it right. Sometimes we'll get it wrong. That's just the way it works. But you can stay up to date to see how right everybody is, because that's certainly something I'll be doing. I'm monitoring what everybody says, and we'll see together how everybody's doing, if they're right or if they're wrong this year. Certainly at least something I hope to do. And for now at least, will continue to do the weekly video discussions I do on Saturday. If you've been following me so far, you know I do weekly video discussions on Saturday. I will continue to do those till around hurricane season, and then I'll switch to more daily discussions, of course, because by then I'm pretty sure we'll have a lot more to talk about, plus actual activity that'll probably begin to occur around that time. And my first forecast, that's coming out April 17th, so mark your calendar and definitely subscribe for that as well. Hopefully, at least I hope you subscribe. And also tweets. I'm on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. I still call it Twitter. I'm on Twitter and I do tweet basically at any time. Anytime I find something interesting, I will tweet about it and let you guys know. Which that brings me to where to follow me, most importantly, because I just mentioned on Twitter and on YouTube too. I really do hope you could subscribe. And subscribe, help me grow my community, help me grow my channel, and also help me grow Twitter as well. Two very big platforms that I'm gonna be utilizing a lot of this year, or at least I hope to. And on Discord as well. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, or you just want to talk, here's my Discord. Look forward to, even if you just want to talk, you want to say hi, I'll be more than happy to do so. But of course, really do encourage you to follow me, and let me know what you think. Anytime you have any comments or questions, I'll definitely be more than happy to answer them for you. Thanks for watching, though. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, subscribe, share with family and friends. Stay safe. And one most important thing, remember, it might seem like it's far now, but hurricane season is definitely going to come, and the time will fly by. So use this time now to prepare and watch what's going on, because trust me, things could definitely get interesting this year. That is for sure. Thanks for watching, and we will talk again soon.